Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to talk about the ETG, the Emergency Temporary Guardianship. Now, I'm pretty sure I've talked to you about this in the past, but it seems to be a recurring issue where families are calling us and saying, we'd like to get an emergency temporary guardianship. Or I've spoken to, another lawyer and they told me I should file for an emergency temporary guardianship. And I'm like, well, that's great. Happy to help you, but you can't file just for the emergency temporary guardianship. You cannot file the emergency temporary guardianship as a standalone. The way this works is in Florida, you file for guardianship, which is permanent guardianship. And, the word permanent might mean 6 months, a year, 2 years. I can't give an exact timeline as we sit here because I know nothing about your case. Also, in order for permanent guardianship to be ordered by the court, the examining committee, which is the 3 court-appointed experts, have to make a determination if the ward, the person who is sort of on the receiving end of this, the person whose rights we're looking to take away, lacks capacity. In other words, should we be taking the authority for them to make decisions on their own behalf and giving it to somebody else because they simply aren't capable of doing what we would consider objectively rational, specifically with regards to their medical decisions, their mental health condition, their substance use, things of that nature. So the way this works is we file a petition for a guardianship, and it would also potentially include taking control of their property. For instance, if there is significant assets at stake, is there a trust fund? Do they have money in the bank? Do they own real estate? And we're not taking it away, but we're just going to take control of it to make sure they don't use it to continue to make decisions so they don't waste the asset. And so we file for a guardianship. We're also going to file for the court to make a determination as to whether or not they lack capacity. And the add-on, the a la carte piece, if we think it's appropriate, is the petition for emergency temporary guardianship. In other words, asking the court, saying, look, judge, we don't have time for the examining committee to do their thing, which typically takes 3, 4, 5 weeks, something like that. We need an order right now. The family needs authority right now. And so what the court will typically do is, once we file our petition requesting an order appointing an emergency temporary guardian, is the court will set a hearing, again, depending on the county, depending how busy the court is, 5 to 7 days, maybe a little quicker than that. And again, it depends. But that's what we're seeing as of the time of making this video. 5 to 7 days. We get into court. We don't need an expert. Typically, it's going to be 1, if not two witnesses who tell the court what's going on and why we need this extraordinary relief, why we don't have time to wait for the examining committee, and why we need some temporary relief right now while the examining committee is doing their thing. So if somebody's telling you that you can file just for emergency guardianship, I'm telling you they don't know what they're talking about. They're flat out wrong. We have to file a petition for guardianship and a petition for incapacity, and we can add on the petition for emergency temporary guardianship. Now, typically what happens is that once the process starts, in other words, once we ask the court to appoint that examining committee, which is required, we can't just sort of suddenly say, okay, well, judge, we're good. We got a 90-day court order that you gave us for the emergency temporary guardianship. We don't need the rest of this stuff done. The court's going to be like, hold on a second. You just filed 3 petitions, which are sworn documents telling me there's a history here and why you need relief. And now you're like, oh, we're okay? No, sorry, but we're moving forward. And so you can't just sort of file the case, right, get the emergency temporary relief, and then ask the court to just get rid of everything. And that doesn't mean to say the court wouldn't do it, but the court's going to want to know why. Why are we making all these allegations in a petition for guardianship and then suddenly having a change of heart? That's going to raise some red flags. The court's going to be concerned, and the court may say, sorry, you filed a sworn document, you asked for relief, you asked for the appointment of an examining committee, and now you don't want it? What's going on here? And so I just want you guys to be aware of this, because this is serious stuff. And the guardianship is a wonderful tool that we have adapted to use for behavioral health cases. But it's got to be used correctly, okay? And sometimes it can be done in conjunction with a Marchman Act, which gets us some even quicker relief because we can file that on an ex parte basis. And again, depending on the county, we might get some type of pickup order within 24 hours. Sometimes it's the same day, but we have to be able to establish and prove and plead that there is a primary substance use disorder here. And of course, there's an emergency. I mean, obviously, if the person's in treatment or they're in a Baker Act facility, I can tell you, at least here in Palm Beach County, you're probably not going to get an emergency court order. The court will set a hearing, but you're not getting an emergency order because the court's going to say, sorry, Mr. Esther, what's the emergency? They're somewhere safe. Presumably, you just said they were in a facility. They were in treatment. Where's the emergency? And again, look, we have to handle these on a case-by-case basis, but because this is all that we do, and we don't do anything else but help, families like yours to save their loved ones, we're going to do the best that we can to give you our opinion as to what needs to be filed and when. So, look, I hope that helps. I hope that you understand how the emergency temporary guardianship piece works. And I appreciate you tuning in. And if you like what you heard, I'd love a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you would like me to make a video about something else that's of concern to you, post a comment. I'm happy to make these videos. I enjoy making these videos, and I want you to have the information that you need. You shouldn't have to pay a lawyer to get the information that you need to decide if and when you're ready to make the commitment to file something in the court. So with that said, I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.